Hi, I'm Trausti from the Reykjavík Grapevine. We're currently at the Reykjanes peninsula, specifically in a lava field from the 13th century called Eldvörp, just west of the Blue Lagoon, which you can see over there, and the town of Grindavík, which 3,500 people live in. During the past weeks, there have been frequent earthquakes in this area, and the earth just like a kilometer and a half west of the Blue Lagoon, which is where the smoke is out there, has risen by about 8 centimeters in the last couple of weeks, and there's a build-up of magma under there, and it has, well, specialists and locals and the authorities worried about a potential eruption. So what we're going to do today is that we're going to talk to a volcanologist who is a professor at the University of Iceland, and he's going to tell us what's been happening here in the past few weeks and how this is in many ways different from the past 3 eruptions we've had in the last couple of 2 years. We're here with Professor Þorvaldur Þórðarson, Professor of Volcanology at the University of Iceland, and we're currently on top of a rising magma chamber, I'm told. But I was going to ask Þorvaldur to give us more details about the area here and what's going on here and what's been going on in the past few weeks.
Yeah, maybe the first thing to do is realize we're on the Reykjanes Peninsula.
Yes.
Which is part of the mid-Atlantic ridge system, where we have the plates splitting, moving in opposite directions. It so happens the orientation of the Reykjanes Peninsula is such that it's kind of a parallel, almost parallel to the movement of the plates. So normally when you have extension, you know, the opening is actually perpendicular to the movement of the plates. Mm-hmm. But in this case, you know, because of rotation, we're close to parallel, just as an angle to the movement of the plates. So the plates are kind of slipping by each other here.
Oh, I see.
But there's also a little bit of extension because they're not quite parallel. And that extension opens up pathways for magma to actually rise from deep within the earth, from the mantle up to the surface, and produce this volcanic landscape that we have here. And also for this reason, the volcanic activity on the Reykjanes Peninsula takes place in periods. So we have eruption periods. And in the last 4,000 years, we've had 3 eruption periods, and the 4th one just started in 2021. Each one of those periods is about 300 to 400 years long. And between each period, we have sort of 600 to 1,000 years of quiescence, no volcanic eruptions. And that's why, you know, for many, they were caught by surprise when the activity started here, and people sort of had forgotten that, well, this place can actually erupt.
And you told me just earlier that the last cycle of eruptions was in the 13th century.
It started in the 9th century. It started just after Iceland was settled and continued all the way to 1240. And we're actually sitting on the last lava flow from that eruption period. It was formed in 1240 from a cone row, which is just west of us here. It's called Illafinn.
Oh, bad.
Yeah, the bad lava.
I wonder why they named it that.
And yeah, well, probably because it was rougher than the earlier lavas that had formed, which are actually what we call pahoe.
Okay.
And they're smooth surface. They're almost like a pavement lava.
Yeah, the one we just passed it.
Yes,
yeah. It kind of looks
and this one, as you can see, is more broken up.
Yeah.
And rougher. So it must have been rougher to pass, and you could definitely not take horses across it.
No.
So that's why it probably has the name Illafinn.
As in the Icelandic word illfært.
Yes, exactly.
How to pass.
Yeah. That's a little bit sort of background on this on the history here. So in 2021 we started the fourth eruption period on the Reykjanes Peninsula, and it so happens it's 781 years from this eruption here. So it fits the time scales of things.
So maybe we should have expected something, and
yes, we should have.
Yeah, we should have. Well, we like so often before.
Some of us did.
Yeah, I guess some of us did.
And when we raised those issues, some people got a little bit annoyed with us because they thought we were just.
Yeah, I remember that some city council person in Hafnarfjörður was annoyed by the suggestion last year was it you, that building in the outskirts of the suburbs of Hafnarfjörður, which is just here to the northeast, was potentially not a great idea.
Well, you can build in the outskirts of Hafnarfjörður. It just depends on where.
Yeah.
And in this case, what we were talking about is that if they would extend southwards in that new neighborhood they had, then they would actually get closer and closer to where the events were that erupted in the 12th century.
So like near Grindavík.
Yes, closer to Grindavík. Yeah. So, and the closer you are to the source, the less response time you have if something happens.
True.
And we can see that here with Illarhraun and its craters here. We have Svartsengi Power Plant and the Blue Lagoon a kilometer away.
Yeah, it's not a long distance to travel for lava. I mean, the last eruption would sometimes have kind of like almost a walking speed lava flow.
Yes. And
it would take us, 10 minutes to walk over there?
Something like that.
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And if it, like most of these eruptions, they start, a little bit more powerful than they sort of are on average.
Yeah.
So you have the greatest intensity of activity at the beginning, and then it sort of tapers off. That's sort of the typical pattern. And if you have, like in 21 to 22 and 23, we had sort of a production of magma on the order of 4 to 40 cubic meters per second.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the walking pace. If you increase that by an order of magnitude, let's say 3 to 400 cubic meters per second, then the lava that those things are feeding is also going to be moving faster.
Yes, I see.
And so you could even have less response time. I sincerely hope that there's not going to be an eruption.
Yes.
And I sincerely hope if there is an eruption, it is a small one and that we can easily deal with and we can detect it very early on. But the whole thing is, and the most important message is that we can't rule out the other scenario.
No.
It could come up very fast. It could be moving relatively fast. The lava flow could be moving quite fast in the beginning. And if it's close to these important infrastructure, then anyone there could be potentially in danger. And that's what we need to consider when we're thinking about, the sort of the hazard side of things and how we respond to it.
Well, I mean, this is one of the major difference between the last 3 eruptions and the this area potentially erupting is that the other area doesn't have any infrastructure. Here we have, we have the Blue Lagoon right there. We have the town of Grindavík with 3,500 people over there. And we have almost all the energy infrastructure for this whole peninsula nearby or next to the Blue Lagoon. We're looking at it right here.
Yep.
So here we have a very, like a completely different situation.
Yeah, and several 100 billion kroner investment, even though human life cannot be valued in a monetary way, but there's also a lot of investment.
Yeah.
And so, and these are important infrastructure. And if the power plant, for example, is not operable, then it's not only Grindavík that will suffer from it. It will also be the town of Reykjanes and other communities on the peninsula, which depend not only on the electricity from the power plant, but also on the hot water, and also nearby is the cold water resource.
We're standing on top of where like the ground has been rising by what, 7 or 8 centimeters in the past?
Yes, where we are right now is kind of the center or the loci of the inflation. The land is rising here, and the reason why land is rising here is beneath us about 4 to 5 kilometers depth. We have magma coming in from below.
Okay.
And it's rising, it's rising from potentially from depths of 10 to 15 kilometers, and then it's been pumped into this sort of a storage zone, some form of a container at 4 to 5 kilometers depth. And as you pump things in, you need to create volume for the new magma that is coming up, and that's why the surface has been lifted up, because that's the easiest way to do it. This is a free surface which you can lift. But at the same time, you also build up pressure, internal pressure, in that storage zone. And as you do that, and that, is exerting force onto the roof and the sides of that storage zone, and you get number of fractures or cracking, so to speak, and that's the earthquakes. So it's inducing earthquakes as well. And if this continues as it is going, then it's very likely that the internal pressure of that magma storage zone will overcome the tensile strength of the roof. And if it does that, it will open up a crack and a pathway to the surface, and we will have an eruption, most likely. And we talk about a region, it is maybe 2 kilometers wide.
All right.
And then it has a length of a few kilometers as well. And that's where it most likely will, open up. If we look at the location of the earthquakes and where they sort of seem to be, have been located during this event, they align on older volcanic fissure, the Eldvör fissure, which is over here further to the west.
Yeah.
It's on the horizon there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you see the sort of low cones there. But then it's on the Illahraun fissure, which is just west of us here. And then it's on what we call Sundhnúkar, which is a volcanic lineament on the other side of that hill over there in the distance.
So on the other side of that road leading from Reykjanes down to Grindavík?
Yes. And the earthquakes have sort of aligned themselves onto those volcanic lineaments, which are already weaknesses in the crust.
I see.
And right now, the activity seems to be concentrated on Sundhnúkar.
So out of those 3 sort of lines that you told me when we spoke yesterday, that would probably be the worst place to have an eruption in terms of like the existing infrastructure.
Yes.
There's
a little low in that hill there.
Yeah.
And the lava would most likely come down, and it's coming down a relatively steep slope, which would increase its flow velocity.
Yes.
And there's a very short distance to the power plant. And also, if the southern part of that volcanic lineament opens up, the southern end of it is just a kilometer north of Grindavík.
The town of Grindavík.
Yes.
Okay.
So that, in my view, that is the worst possible eruption site that we could have. The second one would be Illahraun over here. In the scenario that we're looking at,
yeah.
Eldvör would be the best option if we have options.
Yeah, if we have options.
That would be the best place, because that is furthest away.
Yes, furthest away from anything that doesn't matter.
And that would, give us more time to respond, and more time to even do some preventive measurements in terms of protecting the infrastructure, and also give us more time to get people away if we need to get them away. And if the eruption is small enough, then maybe we'll just stay over there in the west and never reach these infrastructures.
Another tourist spectacle instead of potential catastrophe.
Yes.
We also discussed on the phone yesterday that this area has sort of risen a little bit before. There have been earthquakes here, and the Earth
Yes.
a little bit, but it hasn't led to a volcanic eruption. But that was before this sort of new era of eruptions. in this area.
The new eruption period.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's just kind of like, you can maybe explain that.
So in 2019 and 2020, there were similar kind of event taking place. We had earthquakes because we had magma rising from below and intruding and forming. We call it a sill because it's a sort of horizontal body that you're generating at sort of a 4 to 5 kilometers depth. And that happened 4 times in this period from 2019 to 2022. And but they're all smaller than what we're seeing happening now. What is happening now, the inflow rate is double what it was before, and the intrusion now has become bigger than these previous intrusions. Also, but what is important in when you think about these things is that there's clearly an established pathway from deeper storage zones to this shallow area here, because we're repeatedly getting magma injected into at this level. And I think it's only a matter of time when we get an eruption in this area. It may not happen now.
No.
It may stop now and nothing happen, and hopefully that's what happens. But this is probably going to repeat itself then in the near future. And eventually we will have an eruption. If we want to build sort of protective walls or dikes around here, I think we should start doing them now because it will take time to build them. It can take up to a week to 10 days. And in this case, people sort of point out that, well, what if the eruption happened inside the protective walls? Well, in this case, if that happens here, that is this low which where the power plant is and where Blue Lagoon is, they're gone anyway.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do to save them if it happens that close to these infrastructure. If we build the walls here and the eruption is outside of it, we may be able to save them.
Yeah. One last question, unrelated kind of. Is there any more? Is there another university in the world right now where it's as exciting to learn volcanology as it is at the University of Iceland?
I'm sure it is. And you know, I did my PhD at the University of Hawaii, and it's pretty close to a volcano called Kilauea. And we used to go there frequently, and Kilauea at the time was erupting constantly. There was an eruption that lasted for 35 years, and which was a very good education.
I can imagine.
And gave us a lot of opportunity to go and study lava flows in different shapes and forms and understand them much better. And a lot of our knowledge today about lava flows comes actually from that eruption.
Well, thank you very much for
You're welcome.
having this talk with us. It was very educational. And we'll just hope for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't want...
Prepare for the worst.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Yeah. That's exactly what we need to do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So in the past 24 hours, there have been 1,200 earthquakes in this area. And actually, as Dr. Þorvaldur was pointing out before, those earthquakes have been happening in and around that hill over there. And to the right of the hill, you can see the power plant that supplies the Reykjanes Peninsula with electricity, hot and cold water. And here's the Blue Lagoon. So the Blue Lagoon is still open, even though it's currently somewhat under threat by this seismic activity, and so is the town of Grindavík over there. And we'll keep our eyes on the situation and give you updates about how this progresses. Thanks for watching. I'm Jón from the Reykjavík Grapevine, and on the camera has been the ever awesome Art Picnic. See you later.